Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Come with me as we step into the deep, dark depths of the forest of fear. Let us hope that we see sunrise in the morning. Tonight's show is a compilation episode. I think you guys are going to really enjoy these chilling and frightening stories of all types of creepy cryptids and experiences. Please, of course, do let me know down below in the comments. Of course, please do like and share. If you haven't subscribed to DMT, please smash that subscribe button and the notification bell to stay up to date with all DMT content. We have some exciting stuff coming up that I just can't tell you just yet. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's first story, entitled The Oklahoma Demon. Let's get straight into that. Okay, so I had to create this profile for the specific reason to talk about a place that a lot of people might not be aware of, and is in fact probably one of the most dangerous paranormal places in the United States. In Bartlesville, Oklahoma, there is a place called Gap Road. Now, while there is one side of Gap Road that might be famous for its form of Gravity Hill, with the illusion of your car moving on its own uphill, is semi-aware. What is not talked about is the curve along a once used hanging tree to kill African Americans with during the Tulsa race riots, as well as a place where satanic cult used to perform rituals around this tree due to its evil aura. To start it off, Gap Road can easily be found on the map. However, it is highly advised by the locals that live around the area that where the hanging tree resides is that you should not reside there long, as there is a report of a disfigured humanoid hairy thing with burning red eyes that will chase anyone down who happens to stand by long enough. Even though I've been to Gap Road, I've only drove through it and didn't stop for anything. So this story that I was told by my father when he was with a few friends is back in the late 70s. A group of high school friends, including my father's friends at the time, took their girlfriends out around the woods when it was just a complete trail of woods and a dried up creek. Their plan was that their girlfriends were waiting for them up at the top of the hill, where they were going to give them a good scare and trying to get some on top of that. They began to make their way towards the dried up creek, where they started to cross an old wooden bridge. And it was past 1 AM at this time. Midway crossing, one of his friends called out saying he noticed something below them, jumping from below up the bridge. But they quickly dismissed it, since they stated it was impossible for anything to be down there, plus the height was a good 40 feet. However, suddenly his friend let out a bone-chilling scream, as he at first looked like he had sunk straight down, holding onto the rope of the bridge, and then a hairy-looking being grabbing at his foot, trying to pull him down. Everybody began to scream, and my dad's friend quickly ran over to kick the being against its foot, where it let out what he said sounded like an ugly pig growl, and then it let go. They sprinted back away from the bridge, the way they had came, where they all piled into the truck. When they started the truck and the lights came on, the back of the truck suddenly lurched back somewhat. When they turned around, a pair of burning red eyes was pressed against the back window of the truck, along with what my dad's friend described, looking like the devil himself. To this day, he refuses to say what it looked like and wouldn't even draw a picture of it, since he says the mere thought of even thinking about what it looked like would give him horrific nightmares for weeks. They all screamed and immediately floored it, knocking the being off the truck, where it sprung up and chased after them for a few more yards before it vanished into the night. They drove up to the hill where the girls were sitting around, obviously bored, and my dad's friends, horrified and sweaty from the encounter. Two got out and got in the girls' car, while the driver ordered the girls to get off the hill and to get the hell out of here right now, and to not ask any questions. The girls, seeing the paranoia, did what they were told and peeled out of there, and the father's friend followed along, back, keeping a solid 50 miles per hour until they were back in the main town. They reported the incident to the local police, where the police chief himself eventually told them about the reports farmers get of vicious hounds around that area, and even though he believed them, he simply advised the kids to never go back out to the area again. 2 months later, my dad was hearing the stories at school, and, with a morbid curiosity, he and his best friend named Shane got in the car and drove around that same area, but during the daytime, as he wasn't going to try his chances. They pulled up to the hanging tree, and from there got out to examine what it had to offer. It was an ugly tree, my father told me. It had no leaves on it, even though it was midsummer, and it looked rotten in the middle. My father was exhuming it when he noticed what looked like a rod propped up against the tree, and after getting a closer look, it turned out to be a crudely crafted spear. Fascinated by this, he took it and showed it to Shane, who thought his grandma might like it, and put it in his vehicle when they got in. They started driving back to the town when my dad looked to his right and noticed that even though they were driving at 40 miles per hour, a disfigured, completely hairy figure with red eyes was running alongside their car, with its head looking straight into the passenger side window. He and his friend lurched to the right and immediately screamed to the top of their lungs as my father drove faster until the creature could not keep up. Visibly shaken, they quickly returned back to their homes, where my father dropped off his friend and went home himself. What happened that night to Shane, however, my father still feels bad for. Shane got a call from his grandma after having given her the spear only 5 hours after the incident, with her audibly distraught, telling him to get down to her house right now. His grandma was claiming that the spear was moving on its own, saying that when she first woke up, it was on one side of the room where she did not leave it. But she stated that when she closed her eyes and held them closed for only 3 seconds before opening back up, it was neatly propped up against the other side of her bedroom. Shane got a couple of his friends who were at his house having a few drinks, where they drove out all the way to his grandma's house. At this point, was visibly shaken and started claiming that a black shadow was walking in and out of her bedroom, growling, and its head was shaking uncontrollably, while the spear started to levitate. They snatched the spear and immediately took it out of the house, driving all the way back to Gap Road in the middle of the night without stopping, tossed the spear out the car window near the vicinity of the tree and peeled out of there. There are many stories about Gap Road. What makes it so scary is that how obscure that not a lot of people know of, and as of today, this is being uploaded on the date it is uploaded. This creature still exists and still terrorising the locals around the area. So, if you ever live in Oklahoma and now have a morbid curiosity to go to Gap Road, I advise you, change your plans, unless you want to get pulled off of a bridge to your death, or whatever this creature does. I am terrified to even be near that area. The deal with vampires. I cannot and never will describe to you the agony of the modern romanticism surrounding the vampire. It is, to me, not only to be ridiculed, but highly offensive and should not be considered in any sort of taste. To romanticise vampires is to make September 11th edition of Jenga, a Holocaust sitcom. Have you ever seen the eyes of an animal that eats? It's not a look of rage or joy in their eyes. I once found a praying mantis in my backyard when I was 6 or 7, and I followed its movements around the garden for about 2 days until I saw it another way and couldn't bear to see it anymore. One morning, the green thing had found a cricket. I saw it peering down with its cone-like eyes at the poor, broken-legged creature. It did not tilt its head, nor did it show any sign of emotion I would have liked. I was used to seeing animals on television indicate when they were curious. The mantis did nothing of the sort. It stood, frozen, as the pitiful cricket edged away, and I blinked, and suddenly the cricket was in the mantis's jaws, bottom first. The cricket wriggled as the mantis relished and nibbles from the bottom half, twitching and struggling, the mantis' tiny mouth full of horrid fingers flurrying, its putrid little flaps undulating and chewing. It even turned its head as it took bites, exactly like we do. It didn't look at its meal. It in no way comprehended the pain of its meal. The struggling was a nuisance, and barely that. The little sweet green mantis just looked at me, with its pupil dots and glimmering cones, making delicate nibbles as a frighteningly small amount of the cricket left was still struggling. The head came last. I thought the mantis would jump on me or jump away, somehow satisfied with that act of cruelty. That's it. That's what I really am. I thought he would leave. But he didn't. That little mantis had nothing to think about. I had nightmares about the silent screams of my food for weeks. I imagined my cereal turning into screaming flesh in my mouth. When I called to Vampire, who thought no one was looking, it was much the same. Mr. Brett lived in the same building as me, and I called him in the hallway occasionally. I didn't like Mr. Brett at all. First of all, there was a thing where he always waited for someone to offer the door to him. He could never manage to offer the same courtesy, and it just seemed to be a bit rude. There was something else, and I assure you, it was nothing to do with his appearance. He was a bit like some school teachers who you later learned are predators. It was just an odd feeling that you shouldn't be left alone in the room with him. The occasional fear that you'd seen him when you went down the stairs, and he would just put his hand out to stop you. I got this in the back of my head every time I passed him. I could never put my finger on why. That was until I met him on a night street heading back to my apartment about 3 in the morning. He was behind me the whole time, and once again, I just couldn't shake the feeling that
something was off.
Sometimes, when you're alone on the street and there's someone going the same way as you, and they just seem to have turned too many of the corners you have, like they're following you, and you don't want to look back to see if they still are, because then they know you know. I knew that Mr. Brett would follow me up until I got to my floor, as it was beneath his. I also knew that I must not get in the elevator with him. I must not, under any circumstances, get in the elevator with him. So I took the stairs, and he followed. In the stairwell to the second floor, the metal winding steps just in the corner where you could hide and not be seen from the bottom or the top of the stairs, I stopped. In a last-ditch effort to assure myself nothing was strange, I stopped and offered to let Mr. Brett go ahead of me. He gave me a look. In this precise moment, he was an it. There are many animals on this earth that put on disguises. However, most of them are designed to blend in and hide, or to intimidate and scare. There are moths that look like bark, and there are moths with massive eyes on their wings. Like most disguises, they fall apart upon close scrutiny. But there is this occasional occurrence of the more malignant kind of disguise. The wolf in the sheep's clothing, perhaps, for example. There was a kind of spider that is shaped and coloured exactly like an ant. Most ants cannot tell the difference until they are being eaten. But if you look closely, you can see that it has two very dark and very large eyes in the middle of its head. Two black, predatory eyes, and a crown of smaller eyes above. The minuscule giveaway that it is not what it seems. When I looked closely, I saw what Mr. Brett really was. It was like something wearing the skin of a man, and now, because it had been careless, it needed to adjust some things that fell out of place. Its mouth was forced shut so hastily it had not been able to align it properly with human anatomy. The slightest droop and crookedness made me wonder what his true mouth looked like when it wasn't puckered into lip shapes. His eyes were utterly human and bloodshot, but not in surprise. Like a spider, they were fixed, immovable, and his eyelids were gone. The look in his eyes told me nothing, and the nothing told me everything. There was a nothing in Mr. Brett. He froze, and at no point did his brow furrow in rage at having been seen. Jesus, I said, in some ways half a swear, half a prayer. The eyes did not move. When I blinked, I saw him merely as his old dirty-looking self, but I could not unsee his eyelids as vestigial pieces of mimicry. I could not see his small and wrinkled human lips as anything other than perpetual imitation. He made his way from me up the stairs quickly, and my skin crawled as, presuming me still paralysed, he went at eerie and unnatural speed, crawling as his hands and feet scuffed the walls. Mr. Brett lived in that block for 2 more months after that. He knew I knew. I knew he knew. A few cats and dogs went missing over that time, and Mr. Brett smelled better on the days of the reports. I could tell when he didn't have the opportunity to meet anyone on the stairs, and on those days, I took the liberty of boarding my doors up. In truth, I don't think he ever planned to come for me. I wasn't enough of a threat, and in too poor of a mental state to convincingly rat him out. The worst of it was that he never bothered to hide from me anymore. Sometimes he'd come to my window, uninvited and unable to enter, always when no one else could see. His frozen and bloodshot eyes, his nose against the glass, his breath too cold to fog it up. The worst part was that I lived on the 6th floor. A were-wolf. Let's get straight into that. Me, my 2 brothers and his girlfriend were out enjoying a beautiful sunset at one of the many beautiful nature spots we love to go to. There was a lake there, so my brothers were fishing off the edge as we sat and made a fire and watched. We had been there quite a while, and it was starting to get kind of dark now, and usually that means it's really dark inside the woods, and we still needed to walk back to the car. So as we were getting ready to go, everything got dead silent. It was odd. Birds had went quiet, no sounds from squirrels, woodchucks, or any of the previous background noise from earlier. Nothing. After about what seemed like forever, but in reality was maybe a few seconds, out of nowhere, we started hearing howling and yipping from coyotes, and they didn't sound too far away. It sounded like there could have been 20 of them. My brother picked up his 12 gauge and told us all to move quickly. If those coyotes were hungry, and in a pack that big, we could be in some trouble. We were in full sprint back to the car. The coyotes sounded like they were getting closer and closer. One point, like they were right on our tail. It was pretty scary. It seemed like they were after us at the time. But when I think back, I think they were running away from something. Because no coyotes attacked us when we had stopped to get into the car, and there were 4 of us, we had to stop to open the doors. If they were after us, they could have easily taken one of us at that point. But right as we reached the car, it sounded as if they'd made a turn to the left and were running off in that direction. But we were all too spooked and wanted to get the hell out of there. On our way home, we have this little pull-off that runs parallel to the main road. My brother noticed a little sign made by hand in wood that said Ware-Wolf Hollow. Mind you, we have lived here all our lives and had never seen this. Been this way dozens and dozens of times, never once seen this sign. So the entrance to pull this off has a sign that says Ware-Wolf Hollow. So we decide to take it because it piqued my brother's curiosity. Along this pull-off is a guardrail. Behind the guardrail is about a 70-foot drop to a sheep farm in our area. We rounded the turn where we couldn't see around and we came up on this creature, big and hairy. It had pointy ears, that of a German shepherd's pointy ears. It had piercing green yellowish eyes, and the eyes were separated just like a human's. The arms hung down to its knees, and he appeared to be at least 8 feet tall and hunched over. As we came around the bend, my brother stopped in the middle of the road. This thing is looking at our headlights while we are trying to make sense of what we were seeing. It didn't look like a bear. What the hell else would look like that? After a few seconds, this thing turns its back around and takes one hand and lifts himself up over the guardrail and over the 70-foot drop down, all in one swift motion. We, all a bit too creeped out to go look to see if we could see anything. It was dark anyways. The next day, me and my brother went down to the farm at the bottom of that 70-foot drop. We'd seen the thing jump over. We told them what we'd seen and if we could maybe walk the back of the property to see if we could find any remains. As we were walking, the farmer was telling us about how the sheep had been coming up dead with their throats torn out. Said it was the strangest thing because most game in the area hunt for food to eat. These attacks seemed vicious, without purpose, and that is the weird thing. He told us that they had the saliva tested and found on the neck of one of the sheep. It tested positive for an unknown canine. The wooden sign at the entrance of the pull-off was gone as well when we had gone back. We've seen these things, all 4 of us. It definitely was not a hallucination. Any suggestions on what this could have been? Bear is ruled out. All 4 of us agreed there's no way it was a bear with the features this thing had. It was scary, human looking, with hair. Bigfoot? I thought he was supposed to be a nice species. My personal opinion is we've seen a real life werewolf. The others are more sceptical than I am though. So let me know what you think. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Big thank you to all the authors as ever. Check their links in the description. Please do like and share, guys, and let me know what you think down below in the comments. And remember, if you're heading out to the deep, dark woods, keep your eyes on the trees and around you. And above all, be safe, not sorry.